Welcome back to another episode of Samsung Developers. Hi, I'm Vincent, one of the developers here at Samsung. In this session, we will look, no pun intended, into one of the newest SDK released, the Look SDK. Have you thought of another way to make the Android view system more usable, visible, and intuitive? The Look SDK does just about that. It's a specialized widget while making use of the S Pen. The Look SDK has tons of features. Let's delve on it one by one. First up is a cocktail for the Note Edge. Using this, you can view your applications on the second area of your screen to enable multitasking mode. During immersive mode, you can take control of the whole screen for the current app alone. Next is the WritingBuddy. This translates handwritten input to values accepted by the application. Hovering your S Pen on the target surface, an icon appears to show the input editor. Expanding the view for quick access to recent content or menus is the purpose of the AirButton. Using the S Pen, you can select from the list provided by the AirButton and perform additional operations. Next is a SmartClip that allows the capture and extraction of data using the S Pen. You can create cropped screen captures, collect metadata from the Android view, and convert to text. And lastly is the PointerIcon, which changes when you place the S Pen on view. This can be a great help for drawing applications for selected color icons and other styles to indicate the current status. Before we start creating a sample application, please prepare the following: an Eclipse IDE with ADT plugin, jar files of Look SDK. You can download them from developer.samsung.com. A Samsung device from the Note series, as we'll be using the S Pen. In this session, we'll be using the Note 3. Now, if you don't have a Note 3 or even a Note 4, you can go to the remote test lab to test your application out. This is going to be our first application using the Look SDK. Among its types, implementing the WritingBuddy is our first take. I'll go ahead and create a new Android application project. I'll name it Look Sample. And click Finish. First, I'll set up our layout graphically, meaning drag and drop. We need the basics: a couple of buttons, a frame layout, and a text view. For the XML, we supply IDs for everything so we can access it later, and texts for visual instruction. Now we go to our code in Java. Let's set the content view and initialize our palette members. To access the functions for the WritingBuddy, we create an instance of type Look WritingBuddy. And pass our frame layout as a parameter to determine the location of our input. For us to see the output, we set up our listener. This is responsible for converting our handwritten input into a character sequence. We then display this character sequence in our text view. You may be wondering what the buttons are for. The first is to enable us to toggle the enabled feature. Let's declare a Boolean value here to denote the enabling feature and set it when the button toggles. We use the setEnabled function for our WritingBuddy to apply changes. The second button varies the editor type. Again, we declare an integer variable, setting it first as type editor text. It simply means that it accepts all possible input. Toggling the button, we change the value to type editor number. In contrast to the first one, this does not accept alphabetic inputs. To apply these changes, we use the setEditorType function. I think this one's done. Let's give it a run. Remember, we set the enabling value to true. Observe as we hover around our input surface. This icon appears. Hit the button to disable it. Try hovering it again. Nothing happens. Enable it again so we can do some scribbles. Now, by default, it accepts text. So we tap this icon over here, and we can write on the space provided. Once we're done writing, our input is now shown below. Amazing, isn't it? It's so much easier than using the soft keyboard. Changing the editor type to numbers as such. Numbers and special characters can be our input. Alphabetic characters are now ignored. From the state of our application, we can actually implement one more type on the SDK. Since we already have buttons, let's play with AirButtons. We will have to modify the listeners that we have for them. We can do this in 3 steps. First is to fill in the list with all intended choices. It's basically a list of AirButton items. Go ahead and make a function for this where our return type is the SLook AirButton adapter. This collects all our AirButton items and set them in an item list, setting up the array list of AirButton items. We now add items to it. Our constructor for the AirButton item consists of an image, which we'll set as null, a string for the description, either disable or enable whichever you want to put first, and an object, which we'll also set as null. Now we copy this whole thing and just change the function name and the descriptions for the other button. Second is to set up our item select listener that classifies the index of the selected item and perform actions according to it. You may opt to change the variables here if you want. The integer value, item index, serves as the index of the selected item from the list. The actions we perform for every index is based on the order of the items from the list we created. Since I added disable first, when item index is equal to 0, it should disable the feature. Else the feature is enabled. Again, we copy this and replace the actions fit for changing the editor type. Lastly, we set the AirButton itself. This ties in the AirButton items and the item select listener. Again, we create a function that returns the AirButton itself as the button is a parameter. Creating an instance for the SLook AirButton, we need the button, an SLook AirButton adapter coming from our first function, and the UI display type that can be either be a list or a menu. For this AirButton, we assign its own item select listener. Once everything is set, return the AirButton to the button on the UI. Trying on the app, you can see that every item you hover and press the button on the S Pen, the list for the button shows up for your selection. Just go ahead and play around with it. Let's summarize the Look SDK and the things we talked about in this episode. Library files are needed to implement such functions, so be sure to include them in your project folder. For every feature in the SDK, requirements are set, just like the way the cocktail feature is meant to be used for the Note Edge and not just for the Note 3. If you're creating AirButtons for not just one UI element, note the function names used for each, and then collate the related ones together. That's it for Look Basics. We hope this tutorial helped. For inquiries, please post your questions on the official forum at developer.samsung.com. Thanks for watching.